My husband is a renowned scientist. When asked about emotions in the interview, he said, "I don't think I'm a qualified partner. Under no circumstances would I prioritize romantic love. I only wish to spend my limited time pursuing boundless science." After the program aired, there was nothing but praise for his fearless pursuit of science. Yet I quietly tucked away my medical report. "I have cancer. Terminal." Those days he went to London to receive the award were my last days in this world. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful novels every day. Now the story begins. The final moment before consciousness faded was the blinding light of the surgical lamp. And when my spirit left my body, I could see the full view of the operating room. When I saw the image representing the heart rate on the electrocardiogram beside the hospital bed had flattened into a straight line, I suddenly realized, it seemed I had already died. For some reason, I had become a spirit, able to drift around freely. Just this morning, I was still in good shape and could exchange Ronald a few words with him. He had an international results presentation to attend and was flying out at noon today. So I got up at 7 in the morning to make breakfast for him. Ronald looks so thin, yet he's quite picky about his food. The toast should be toasted just a little bit crispy, and the milk should be warmed to about 80% hot. As my son puts it, "Mom, you've spoiled Dad's taste buds." I neither confirm nor deny this. After all, having taken meticulous care of him for 20 or 30 years, even the most troublesome things have become habits. "Ronald, I heard that due to some air mass in the UK, the temperature will drop suddenly. I brought an extra down vest for you. The chewing gum is in the left pocket of your backpack. You always get earaches on flights. Chewing one will help a bit. Don't stay up too late at night. Has your heart been bothering you lately? Get to bed early. It's the polar continental air mass." My words were abruptly cut off. Raising my head sluggishly, I met his clear, lucid eyes. The saying, "Time never conquers beauty," fits Ronald quite well. His brow ridge remains strong, and though he's approaching middle age, time seems to have left no trace on him. Thus, the chill that had accompanied him since youth could still pierce straight to the depths of my heart. He was correcting the inaccuracy in my first statement. Britain is affected by what air mass? Should be the polar continental air mass. But I just wanted to show him my concern. I lowered my eyes. I straightened his tie for him. "Got it. Be careful on your way, Ronald." He brushed past me, thinking I had nothing to do this afternoon. Actually, that's not the case. He's going to the other side of the Atlantic to attend an academic presentation. I also have a meeting to attend. It's my pre-surgery meeting. The doctor said the success rate of this surgery is only 20%. The doctor informed me that the stomach cancer wasn't detected in time, and the cancer cells had already spread throughout my body. I sat in the hospital corridor all afternoon. The TV hanging in the corner was playing an episode of Today's Interview from a few days ago, the one where Ronald was invited as a guest. The man with cold eyes didn't want to waste too much time on anything unrelated to scientific research. Even when asked about his wife, he would only briefly skim over the topic. "I'm a blockhead. I don't understand love. My wife, to me, she's more of a responsibility. Celebrate anniversaries. That's just formalism. I'd rather spend that time doing a few more experiments." Sounds like Ronald would say, "Forget anniversaries. He doesn't even celebrate birthdays." When we were younger, I used to pester him about it, hoping one day he'd show up with a bouquet of fresh roses. Yet, I've never once received a bouquet of roses. A mind capable of remembering countless data stubbornly refuses to retain those 4 digits of my birthday. Eventually, I just sat alone at the table, preparing a bowl of longevity noodles, and let it pass. Ronald is an iron tree that cannot bloom. It took me over 20 years to finally accept this truth. So it's only in recent years that I've gradually started to feel something was off with me. Call it exhaustion. Call it giving up. Funny enough, he is him, and I am me. This simple truth he laid out before me decades ago. I'm only understanding now. I folded the medical report into a corner and put it in my pocket, only calling my son. Percival is close to me, because Ronald doesn't like children, and his only son knows nothing about research. Percival's voice choked up a bit after listening to my emotionless account. "Mom, you and Dad." I didn't tell him. I lowered my eyes, staring at the granite beneath my feet. I don't want to tell him. He is him, and I am me. Besides, what would he do even if he knew I was sick? Would he give up his round-the-clock obsession with research to take care of me? Percival, Mom doesn't know how much longer she has to live. If mom dies someday, don't even tell dad. I lowered my head to smooth out my clothes. Ronald, why bother bringing up things he couldn't care less about just to upset him? Okay, Percival responded over the phone. Mom, to be honest, Dad never deserved it in the first place. He really doesn't deserve someone as good as you. My spirit drifted through the hospital corridor, watching the doctor emerge from the operating room and shake his head regretfully. Percival collapsed weeping beside my hospital bed. He'd brought me to the hospital at noon, waiting outside the operating room all afternoon until evening. But Mother couldn't fight hard enough to open her eyes again. He was crying so sadly, and I was anxiously pacing around him. But he couldn't see me. I really wanted to hug him, just like when I comforted him as a child, telling him not to cry. Percival has worked so hard. Although he didn't become a scientist as his father had hoped, his paintings are loved by many, and he's even having an exhibition in Italy later this year. I sat beside him, looking up at the stars at night, singing to him just like I did when comforting him as a child. He couldn't hear, but I felt that this way, he would know his mother was by his side. I was suddenly carried away by a gust of wind to a place very, very far away. The senses of the spirit after death are truly wondrous. While I could perceive what was happening in the hospital after my death, at the same time, I arrived at Ronald's meeting venue. His meeting is expected to last for 7 days. A man in a well-tailored suit easily becomes the center of attention in the room. Young, handsome, with a resume that could be described as unprecedented and unmatched. To be honest, Ronald has probably been the center of attention since childhood. During college, the number of girls who liked him was as countless as fish in the river. In those days, when traditional values still held some sway, there were girls who openly pursued him right to the doorstep of his dormitory. Each time, he would look at them with an expression that kept people at arm's length. Dressed in the most ordinary white shirt, textbooks tucked under his arm, he would lower his head to glance at them with restrained detachment. Sorry, I don't like you. Yet the words were exceptionally blunt. What many men proudly consider as being popular was nothing but a mere nuisance to him. By that time, he had already won national scholarships so frequently it became routine. His name often slipped from the teacher's lips. And back then, I was one of those students who looked up at him, the kind on the very fringes. I only dared to steal a glimpse of the corner of his shirt as we left the cafeteria. Ronald had absolutely no idea that I had been secretly in love with him for 3 or 4 years before our blind date, and I would never have guessed that 3 years after graduation, the blind date arranged by my family was with him. I will never have someone I like. This was Ronald's first words to me when we met. If I had to say what I like, it's conducting experiments, doing calculations, basically anything that doesn't involve people. He lightly furrowed his brows. Yet even so, it couldn't mask his dazzling handsomeness. He stated his case succinctly and clearly. We're not talking about love. We're just ensuring there's an heir. Do you understand? Actually, at that time, Ronald made it very clear. It was me who thought I could accept it. It was me who wanted to be with him. I always felt there would be plenty of time. Always believed that one day his candid, clear gaze would linger on me. Always felt that you'll come to like me. Should I call it overestimating myself? Placing my day and night efforts in that so-called affection born of time. My spirit drifts to his side, watching him converse solemnly with the scholar across from him. The man was tall and slender, aloof yet elegant. Am I quite foolish? With my hands in my pockets, I looked at him. They say that highly intelligent people view ordinary folks the way ordinary folks view fools. On the other side, my remains were placed into the hearse. The academic conference was bustling with noise and excitement. Ronald, do you think I'm quite foolish? Ronald took a photo of the London nightscape with his phone and sent it to me. Of course, I could never go back again. Percival truly didn't tell his dad about my death, even blocking Ronald from seeing the obituary posted on my iMessage. This is for the best. I bothered him too much while I was alive. I didn't want to trouble him after death by making him change his flight. Besides, I don't think he wanted to see me one last time anyway. The night view of London was quite beautiful, but for some reason, that day, he stared at his phone for a long time on the windy balcony. I leaned over to look and suddenly realized that in the past, whenever he sent me a message, I would almost always reply instantly. When he went abroad for business trips before, he would casually snap a few photos and send them to me, and I would reply with memes saved from Percival, like a thumbs up or 2 thumbs up with the words, "Awesome," on them. This time, he waited for a long time, but I didn't reply. Mr. Ronald, it's raining outside again. Come back quickly. Don't catch a cold. A young woman's voice sounded behind him. It was his student. In academic circles, some things were tacitly understood in this regard. The girl moved forward somewhat affectionately to drape a coat over him, but he pushed her away. Fish and chips. Disgusting. Ronald sent me pictures of the restaurant. My remains were pushed into the cremation furnace. It's raining again. Ronald sent me a view from his hotel window. Relatives and friends attended my burial ceremony. Tonight's results will be announced. I'm flying back tomorrow. Ronald stood on the podium, surrounded by cameras pointing at him. I managed to somewhat understand with my broken English. His achievement seems to have added another significant stroke to the canvas of human progress. He stands under the spotlight, shining brilliantly in his field of expertise, never failing to live up to expectations. I think that's why I've loved him for so many years. But that was me loving him, not him loving me. In the drizzling rain of April, as the ashes were laid to rest beside a square tombstone, I finally understood this truth. That night after the meeting ended, Ronald called me 3 times without getting through. He then rescheduled his flight ticket for the early morning. On the plane, he kept frowning, his face colder than usual. But then again, it made sense. After all these years of me being at his beck and call, suddenly being unreachable must have felt unfamiliar to him. Actually, every time he returned to China, I would go to the airport to pick him up, and I would definitely arrive 1 or 2 hours early, just waiting for him at the airport. These are also habits. One simply can't bear to see their beloved suffer. I always do my best to ensure he lives comfortably. But this time, he had to walk alone through the nearly empty airport terminal and then hail an overpriced taxi at 4 or 5 in the morning. When he arrived home at 6 in the morning, he knocked first, but no one answered. He unlocked the door with his fingerprint and pushed it open. The house was empty. Everything was just as he left it. The sink spotless, the dining table bare. Only, my often worn slippers were also placed at the entrance. He unbuttoned his coat, which he hadn't had time to change out of in his hurry to leave, and paced around the unlit house, round and round. Bedroom, balcony, bathroom. Finally, he pulled open the washing machine door. Finding nothing, he paused and took out his phone to call me. After a long wait, only a busy tone, he took a deep breath and swiped his thumb to another number in the list. Percival S. The relationship between the father and son was actually strained even before Percival came of age. Over the years, Percival only came home to see me, never intending to acknowledge his father. Ronald was even more that way, immersed in academia, meaning he didn't want to be bothered with raising a child. He was absent during the most crucial stage of his son's growth, so his son has always spoken to him in a harsh tone. What do you want? Where's your mom? Both of them spoke aggressively, but Percival paused. Then came a very strange laugh, an indescribable feeling, as he muttered the same words again. Where's my mom? My mom left. Left for where? Ronald's frown deepened as the first light of dawn fell precisely between his brows. I heard my son's voice on the other end of the line, suddenly turning pale. It's not about where she went. Mom passed away. Dad. A long silence stretched across both ends of the call. From my perspective, Ronald was gripping the phone so tightly his knuckles turned white, still acting like a juvenile delinquent making crude jokes at your age. A lecturing tone. Not taken seriously. Apparently, the fact that I died without even notifying him about the funeral wouldn't register in Ronald's perception. Percival fell silent on the other end of the line. Then after a long pause, let out a scoff with a tone of resignation. Dad, I haven't joked with you once since 6th grade. Percival hung up the phone, and the beeping sound came through the receiver. I found it strange. Ronald seemed frozen in place, standing there still holding the phone. Gradually, he ended up sitting on the sofa at home. Ronald was academically rigorous and serious, but his personal life was the complete opposite. He was utterly carefree, so it was always me who tidied up the house. His study was often piled with manuscripts, and he wouldn't let me touch them. I've been scolded by him more than once over such things. Looking back now, I suppose I was never really the right match for him. He might need a female scientist who can engage in deep conversations with him across the vast academic universe. Not a third-rate magazine editor who only knows how to wash sofa covers until they fade white and has no idea what a polar air mass is. Light slowly seeped into the room. I saw him tracing the lace on the sofa cover, the lace that had gathered a thin layer of dust. She kneaded it over and over. The door at home creaked open, Ronald whipped his head around so violently I feared he might strain his neck. As it turned out, standing outside the door was Percival, who jingled the keys in his hand. Dad. Good timing. Where did Mom keep the ID cards and household register? We need to go to the police station. Ronald stopped kneading the lace-edged knuckles, freezing in place. Cancel her household registration. In the cabinet below the TV, some personal documents belonging to me and Ronald were stored. He was the type to carelessly toss such things around, including medals from major awards, so I always made sure to carefully put them away for him. He personally doesn't care about this, but I always happily and gently stroke it. What's the point? He doesn't understand why I'm happy about his award, so I just smile and hold his arm. Because you're my husband. Of course I'm happy when my husband wins an award. In my youth, there were still times when I would cling to him and act coquettishly. But later, as the years passed, I gradually became more restrained. Ronald was holding on to our marriage certificate and wouldn't let go. The photo on the marriage certificate wasn't well taken either. After all, his lips didn't curve into the slightest smile, while I beamed as if it were a grand wedding meant for me alone. Percival found my ID card and turned to see Ronald holding those two bright red booklets, staring at something, lost in thought. Dad, don't worry, Mom's gone. So your marital relationship with her is automatically dissolved. You are no longer her husband. Never will be. Happy now. You're free to pursue romantic relationships with those young female students you mentor. The sarcasm in her tone was unmistakably sharp. Ronald would have normally lost his temper upon hearing his son speak like this, but this time, he remained silent for a long while. Or rather, he had been lost in thought for quite some time. He simply stood up slowly, then picked up the trench coat hanging on the sofa. I'll go with you. Not a single word was exchanged between the two of them the entire way. To be honest, I've actually thought about it too. Ronald, what expression he would have after I die. Probably just a casual, oh, or, got it. And then he'd continue to immerse himself in his great research for the benefit of humanity. He doesn't love me. This, I know. So my departure would likely be just an episode to him. Neither too big nor too small. Like a pebble tossed into a lake. He actually personally cancelled my household registration for me. I don't even know whether I should thank him for remembering old sentiments. Observing the cancellation of my own household registration. This experience is quite unique. Percival submitted some materials. Ronald sat waiting on a chair in the nearby hall. Even so, he was still striking. His dark green coat like a solitary pine standing in the world. The kind I could always spot in a crowd at a glance. I have no idea what's on his mind. Those dark eyes quietly reflect the hurried crowd passing by. Just like that, Percival filled out my household registration cancellation form, while the staff confirmed it from the other side of the counter. When it was handed back, the household register already bore an additional stamp. Cancelled. Ronald stared at those two words for a long, long time. So long that Percival snatched it back from his father's hands. I'll come back in a few days to collect my mother's belongings. Who said you could take them? After not speaking for a long time, Ronald's voice had become much drier. Am I not allowed to take it as her son? I'm still her husband. You're nothing. Percival, after hurling this insult, both of them fell silent. In reality, Ronald was still standing there, but I felt as if all his strength had been drained away in an instant. He closed his eyes briefly, then said slowly, "Your mother never told me she was ill." Yes. Percival nodded. What's the point of telling you? Percival snatched away the household register stamped with cancelled. Ronald stood alone at the entrance of the police station. Actually, I knew it all along. Ronald was always just a passerby. Trying to melt someone like him is impossible. He is always rational, always aloof. Under the scorching sun, he turned and walked down the street filled with the sound of cicadas. I thought Ronald would go back to deal with his unfinished projects. Yet from the moment he stepped into the entryway, he just stood there in a daze. Just spacing out. Like standing in front of the handmade model I placed in the entryway for over 30 minutes. I brought this model back from Melbourne, but could never get the last piece to fit right. He held me in his arms and called me silly, then effortlessly assembled it in no time. For instance, sitting on the sofa, staring at the aloe vera we both raised, until the sun had set. The aloe vera was a folk remedy I got from the Chinese medicine clinic near our door. Back when my skin was always bad, I often stared at him enviously, poking him and asking why his skin could be so good. Most of the time, he would dodge away in annoyance. Sometimes, He would take my finger and give it a gentle bite. As night fell, he wouldn't turn on the lights. Sitting alone in the dimly lit living room, I think, in my absence, he might still feel somewhat unaccustomed. After all, I've taken care of him for so many years. After all, Nellie will always leave Ronald a light to guide him home. At 1 in the morning, he finally took action. After a cold shower, he burrowed under the covers, the night sky hanging high above. Ronald's routine was actually extremely regular. Staying up past midnight was rare for him, yet he still seemed unable to fall asleep. He suddenly sat up in bed. The moon hung high. He got out of bed and walked to the balcony. The small cucumber and pepper plants I had brought back after haggling with the market vendor hadn't been watered for days and were wilting. He crouched down and squeezed a little water onto them with the nearby watering can. As he squeezed, his hand trembled slightly. Few lights remain in the residential area at night, when suddenly a dog barks, weaving together a desolate loneliness. I can't go anywhere these days. I can only drift around Ronald. Having not slept all night, Ronald surprisingly cleaned the house the next day, which was completely out of character. Schools, companies, and students have all called him, but he showed no response. Every time, just a faint remark. I've just been widowed. After being with Ronald for over 20 years, his behavior after my death is something I just can't comprehend. He wouldn't shed a single tear after my death. That's something I've known all along. He said he wouldn't invest emotions in anything beyond scientific research. That's all. To be honest, I think he would be the first among those close to me to move past the grief of my passing. He might not even feel sad that I'm gone. His indifference ran deep into his bones, almost carrying a cruel divinity. But now it doesn't seem like his usual reaction. Like staring at the gift I brought back for him from my Morocco trip for an entire afternoon. The doorbell rang, and he shuffled slowly to answer it. Standing outside the door was Tom, a good friend from our neighborhood and Ronald's closest companion. Ronald, just taking a walk. Huh, here, I brought you some pancakes from that stall at the neighborhood entrance. Ronald's gaze shifted somewhat blankly to the pancakes. It had to be said, Tom truly lived up to being his good friend. Ronald hadn't eaten for 2 days and a night. Tom understood. Without me, Ronald wouldn't even know how to cook a meal. The sunset bled like crimson across the porch. Ronald turned slightly to usher him inside. After a long pause, he said softly, "Even you were invited to her funeral." One sentence, and the people around immediately fell silent. Ah, Ronald, it's all in the past now. The deceased should be respected. Tom stayed with Ronald at his place for a while. Ronald was never much of a talker, and now he was even more silent, looking down at his watch. Before he could even speak, Ronald already said, "You should hurry up and leave. This personality really doesn't leave any room for others' dignity." Fortunately, Tom wasn't the type to hold grudges. After saying goodbye at the door, just as he was about to leave, Tom suddenly leaned out. It seemed he had hesitated for a long time before finally making up his mind to speak. The sunset echoed quietly behind him, his gaze surging with sorrow. "Jill often told me she envied me when she was alive. What do you envy about me?" "I envy your ability to do research and understand those complex theories," she said. If only her mind worked as quickly, Ronald might talk to her a bit more then. The fading crimson of the sunset reflected in the pupils of the person before him. Ronald froze in place. Ronald, to offer one's sincere heart to another is not for that person. To trample it into pieces. I leaned against the doorframe, watching Ronald still organizing our things. He had been at it all night, seemingly tireless, when he flipped open a photo album. Inside were the photos I had compiled of us. Truth be told, there weren't many. Ronald, with that face that had been attracting admirers since childhood, never liked having his picture taken. Many times I had to drag him into taking photos with me. There were also moments when he had no choice but to be photographed. Like the one he's currently rubbing his fingers over. The time we took the cable car at Fragrant Hills. Back in those days, there weren't many safety measures. After he explained how the cable car worked, I was terrified and clung tightly to his arm, only to be met with his icy, "I regret explaining this." Look, come to think of it, there's a story behind this photo. That was probably the only time I ever had a fight with him, threatening to divorce him. Ronald was always busy, especially when he was younger, with virtually no free time to spare. I really pestered him for a long time and did a lot of convincing before he finally agreed to set aside 3 or 4 days to go on a trip with me. The date was set, and the tickets were bought. Starting from 3 or 4 days before the trip, I was already filled with anticipation. But then, just one day before departure, he suddenly had a group meeting and couldn't go, no matter what. I was already quite angry, but not to the point of hysteria. What truly broke me was, he went to attend a group meeting, also traveling out of town, and went alone with a female student. The female student comes from a well-connected family. On regular days when I take care of Ronald, she always dresses up flashily and tries to get close to him. Whenever I come to see Ronald, she seizes the opportunity to ask him professional questions, dragging it out for over half an hour each time. As for me, I'm left holding a box of takeout that's getting cold, waiting awkwardly. I asked him if he could cancel the group meeting, but he said it couldn't be done. Go by yourself, he said indifferently to me while tidying up his drafts. He said those words in the morning, and by evening, the divorce papers were placed on his desk. He finally looked up at me from that pile of newspaper data. At that time, very few people got divorced, but at that moment, I truly wanted to leave, utterly broken, inexplicably torn by emotions. Or perhaps it was because I was already pregnant with Percival, stirred by hormones. Such an act of venting anger, only the younger me could have done it. But now I actually think, it would have been better if we had really divorced back then. That night Ronald packed his luggage and stood outside my room. He was never much of a talker, so even now I don't know how he managed to cancel that unavoidable group meeting. Anyway, the next day he set off on the journey with me, and we took that photo. I held onto his arm, pressing close, yet his expression remained impassive, his handsome face maintaining its cool detachment. After returning, his career went through a downturn, and I might bear just a tiny bit of responsibility for that. It seems like the two of us together never really had many happy memories. It's quite a wonder we managed to get married and have children. He unfolded the photo paper, on the back of which was a sentence I had written. I'm sorry, Ronald. I never know how to make you happy. Suddenly, he clenched the photo paper tightly in his hand. The paper cut into the flesh, leaving a bloody mark. Ronald found the wine we made last year in the storage room, with my seal on the lid that read, Ronald, do not open until July of the 3rd year. By the time I added this line, I already knew I had cancer. I wrote it because I understood he wouldn't remember such things. While organizing the study, he uncovered the note hidden beneath the glass on the desk. There will be a time when the long wind breaks the waves, and I will set my cloud-white sail to cross the sea. I wrote it for him when his project hit a snag, and the team was running around in circles. The only support I could offer was 3 meals a day, water at just the right temperature in the wee hours, and words of encouragement quietly tucked under his books. The lotus seed and red bean soup I made still sits quietly in the fridge. He doesn't like bitter things and refused to eat it unless the lotus hearts were removed. I coaxed him with a smile. Okay. Next time I'll peel the lotus seeds for you before making it. All right. Actually, by then I already knew there wouldn't be a next time for me to make it for him. Now he sits at the dining table, gently pulling out the cork I had sealed, and eats that box of lotus seed and red bean soup sip by sip with the not yet expired wine. Then 15 minutes later, he rushes to the bathroom and vomits until the world spins. Well, this thing has been in the fridge for over half a month. Ronald doesn't drink much. He once said alcohol only clouds his thinking, yet he finished that entire bottle. His tolerance must be terrible. He clung to the bottle so desperately it made me wonder if I'd misremembered the date. As if the liquor had fermented completely, he rushed to the bathroom to vomit again. A loud noise came from the bathroom as he collapsed face-first into the sink. Water gushed out, drenching his crimson-red earlobes. Slowly, he raised his head and stared at the figure in the mirror. Then suddenly, without warning, he swung his fist and smashed it into the mirror. Ronald has quite some strength in his hands. The mirror cracked, blood flowing down along the fissure. He stared at the distorted figure within, utterly dejected. I rarely had the chance to see him like this, so emotionally explosive. No matter how much I provoked him in the past, he never showed much reaction, neither anger, nor expressions of love. What's funny is that after decades of marriage, it turns out he never even properly expressed his love to me. The blood on his hands had stopped flowing, and he walked out of the bathroom, dragging a chair woodenly before coming to the wardrobe in the bedroom. He swayed as he climbed onto the chair. The top shelf of the wardrobe held our seasonal bedding. I've always been sensitive to cold, unable to tolerate even a slight chill. When I was younger, I would act coquettishly toward him, spreading my arms open for him whenever I returned from the winter cold outside. Cold. Hold me. He refused outright. Buy a blanket. Later, I bought a fleece blanket and never needed his embrace again. Yes. When did I start losing that warmth? I can't remember. The blanket is still hidden inside the cupboard. The one I wrap myself in every winter. So this was what he was looking for, as he tugged at a corner of it. Then he lost his balance, and the whole person came tumbling down with the tightly pulled blanket. He made a loud noise, but he didn't seem to react much. After a long while, he just tightly clutched my blanket, as if that was the only thing he had in his hands. He seemed unable to stand up properly, so slowly, dragging the blanket, he shrank into a corner of the sofa. He wrapped himself in the blanket. Perhaps his drunken frenzy should have subsided by now. He hadn't slept for 3 days and had vomited everything he ate. He closed his eyes briefly. Someone who shouldn't feel cold was now wrapping the blanket so tightly around himself. It even seemed a bit greedy. My things. Would he be greedy for them? I never thought of it that way. He struggled several times, grabbed his phone, and dialed a number. It's Tom. Ronald, listen to me. On the other end of the phone, Tom seemed to have expected it. Jill left. So be it. The dead cannot be brought back to life. Don't dwell on it. You, Tom. The words were cut off. In the quiet rustling night, he looked up at the ceiling that would never light up again. He asked the person on the other end of the phone, Tom, does she hate me now? When I died, he didn't shed a single tear. So why now? Of all times, holding my belongings, crying like this. Ronald and Percival got into a fight over who gets to keep my belongings. They fought all the way to the hospital. Several close friends and relatives had arrived. Percival was being pulled along as he shouted at Ronald. What right do you have to keep my mother's belongings? Did you ever care for me growing up? Have you ever fulfilled your responsibilities as a father? Just because you don't want to be disturbed. Just because you're a great scientist. Yes, you contribute to humanity. You're so idealistic. So noble. So what? I don't matter. Mom didn't matter. And now she's gone. Why do you still dare to take Mom's things from me? Ronald was pinned down by Tom, unable to utter a single word in the end. He raised his hand to wipe the blood from the corner of his lips. In just a few days, he had changed so much, losing weight rapidly. The summer wind swirled through the hospital corridor as his son cursed angrily behind him. Tom patted him on the shoulder. All right. At this point, Ronald, who can you blame? A rather neutral statement. Ronald coughed twice. I never thought. So light, so faint it was extinguished in the melody of the summer breeze. The corridor of the summer hospital ward stretched endlessly. He surely didn't know. I was floating right in front of him. He clutched his chest tightly, as if he didn't understand why it hurt so much there. I never thought I would lose her. The one in pain became Ronald, and the one who wanted release became me. I don't know what people become after they die, nor do I know how long I'll keep drifting. There's nothing I can do but watch day after day Ronald, this man who played such a significant yet effortless role in my life for decades. After his death, I never want to see him again. Ronald tidied up both the house and himself. He shaved off the stubble that had grown over days and styled his hair again. Time has always been so kind to him. The light streaming into the bathroom fell on his profile, and even in his disheveled state, he still looked dashing with an air of something deeper. He bought a plane ticket and flew alone to Italy to secretly visit Percival's exhibition. Percival was probably the first time he ever saw his paintings. Despite being this old, when Percival was very young, he would cry over everything. Whenever he had research projects to work on and found it annoying, he would dump Percival on me and Grandma to take care of. As Percival grew older and started school, he became utterly disappointed that his son didn't inherit any of his mathematical talent. He completely refused to engage with Percival, even though he was a professor himself. He wouldn't explain a single problem to Percival. So now, standing before a massive floor-to-ceiling painting, what exactly was he thinking as he looked up? He stayed alone in the exhibition hall until sunset, then left as quietly as if he had never been there. He also visited my grave. When it comes to me, he has always been a man of few words. And so, he and the photo on my tombstone stared at each other from day to night. When he left, he reached out as if to touch my photo, but ultimately withdrew his hand. The photo was Percival's choice, where I'm forever smiling gently. Back home, he took a shower and changed into the clothes I had insisted on buying him during the new year. He slowly took out the sleeping pills from the bedside drawer. These days, He couldn't sleep at all without the sleeping pills, so he asked the doctor to prescribe some. He stared at the sleeping pill box in his hand for a long time, in the empty and silent room, as if he could no longer find the shadow of the person from the past. He threw the sleeping pills into his backpack, just as he was closing the front door at home. Suddenly, without any warning, he cast a deep glance in my direction, then walked away without looking back. Ronald knows of my existence. 3 days later, I suddenly realized this matter, because since 3 days ago, Ronald started writing some words in his notebook. Nellie, I don't know if you're by my side. You might be, or you might not, but what I can be sure of is, if that experimental direction wasn't wrong, you would definitely be able to see these words. What does this mean? I blinked my eyes as Ronald boarded the green train, the rumbling machine ceaselessly advancing toward the snow-covered country. The destination on the ticket was Russia. Green shadows fluttered past the window like wind. As he put pen to paper, I gradually realized something deeply unsettling. If it's true that people have souls after death, like the state I'm in now, then logically, everyone should become a soul after they die. So why is it that I only see myself? Why do I exist? Why am I the only one who exists? What exactly am I? If I became a ghost, why can't I see other ghosts? Could it be, am I the only ghost in this world? Once this issue arises, I realize that I had taken everything before for granted. The fact that I still have consciousness after death is an extremely bizarre thing in itself. I suddenly raised my head and looked at the man who was writing stroke by stroke in the notebook. It's no coincidence. None of this is a coincidence. The reason I still have consciousness after death is definitely not some supernatural nonsense. It's because of Ronald. This man who works with the world's most cutting-edge technology and stands at the pinnacle of academia, did something to my body without my knowledge. The universe follows the law of causality. The law of entropy tells us that the universe moves from order to disorder. Time only flows forward. Flowers bloom and then wither. The dead cannot return to life. The train rumbled along. Ronald leaned against the carriage. His hand kept writing in the notebook. How ridiculous. Nellie, I once scoffed at the theory of cosmic regression. I thought it was just a delusion of those lunatics who wanted to return to the past. Now, I find myself placing all my hopes on the feasibility of that once hypothetical theory. The law of conservation of cosmic information. An obscure theory suggesting that no information in the universe truly vanishes. If every moment of consciousness is a fragment of information, then the existence of you might be recorded within some cosmic structure. Despite my deep skepticism about cosmic regression theories, I still took advantage of your hospitalization 20 years ago, when you were unconscious from acute appendicitis, to implant what we call a consciousness anchor, a novel conceptual mechanism. In 2002, this technology was not yet mature, and there was only one chance. After that, it was shelved due to its enormous cost and unverifiability. It was merely a newly constructed theoretical model, and I only confirmed that it would not cause any side effects to the subjects. I didn't even know if it would succeed. After all, no one knows what the world after death is truly like. We cannot observe it, nor can we perceive it. Perhaps everything about you has already vanished with the demise of your physical body, or perhaps you are watching me write these very words. Anyway, I now realize that back then, I had already acted out of selfishness. I didn't want you to leave me, so I made you the vessel for consciousness anchoring. I stood there frozen, feeling a chill run down my spine. That's why I retained consciousness after death, and why I've been bound to his side all this time. Nellie, tell me. The white snowfield covered the window. His handwriting came to a halt on the last page. Can people really go back to the past? The researchers at the Russian lab seemed quite welcoming of Ronald's arrival. Or rather, almost every lab in the world welcomed Ronald. A building hidden in a snowfield, said to gather the most cutting-edge technological forces in the world today. They spared no effort to tackle that proposition, a problem humanity has vainly attempted to solve for hundreds, even thousands of years, whether it's traveling to the future or returning to the past. I watched Ronald set down his luggage. He threw himself into research without a moment's delay, watching Ronald as the drafts before him gradually piled into a thick stack, seeing him constantly forget to eat. With each day's sleep time always pitifully short, he seems to have gone mad, as if, or perhaps precisely, to verify the answer to that question. Every day during his free time, he would take out that notebook and write me some words. I don't understand things like space-time leaps or quantum entanglement, but if I exist here, then perhaps their experiment had some chance of success. During these days, looking at Ronald, who has become like this, time rustles and turns, fleeting as a white colt's shadow, I realize I no longer feel fatigue, nor boredom. A consciousness entity no longer experiences such emotions. I sat on the bookshelf nearby, staring at him and thought, have I hated him all along? Actually, not anymore. When feelings wear thin to the end, there's nothing left. To be fair, Ronald was neither particularly good nor bad. In the end, we were just an ordinary couple, perhaps not loving each other so sweetly. That's all there is to it. I gave him my body and soul, my everything. Unfortunately, by the time he turned around, I had already left, and when I realized how much emotional turmoil my departure would cause him, I found myself feeling nothing at all. Ronald is truly remarkable. He can wear down even the most passionate hearts until they're completely numb, all while believing he himself remains unaffected. But in the end, he miscalculated, but I no longer cared. I sat there, watching it all unfold like scenes from a play. The outcome meant nothing to me. Ronald no longer mattered to me either. As for those wasted years on Ronald, I don't regret it. Human choices aren't meant for regret. How I wish Ronald could understand this truth and let me go, instead of persisting with this insane experiment as he is now. His theory involves dividing people into extremely tiny fragments, somewhat obscure and hard to grasp. I can only try my best to comprehend it. Those minuscule fragments can no longer be called individuals. They are atoms, 10 to the 28th power protons. What's astonishing is that each proton can precisely mark its structural function in the quantum state. It formed a stream of protons, which is my current ideological form. Only this proton stream possesses the conditions to advance in a light spiral through the wormhole. This experiment succeeded during Ronald's 3rd year in Russia. He inserted his thumb into the machine. As it operated, a smooth cross-section was created without producing additional blood, bones, or nerves. He successfully transformed into the same kind of substance as me, unobservable by humans. When the finger was severed, Ronald's nerves definitely stimulated him. He clutched his finger in pain and knelt on the ground. But he laughed, growing increasingly neurotic over the years. Tom had brought him pancakes from the neighborhood downstairs, braving the snowfield to visit, staring at the man whose hair had grown long enough to be tied up. Tom only let out a sigh. Ronald, without Jill, there's increasingly no one left to keep you in check. I don't think my presence brings anything to Ronald. All I can do is offer him a cup of hot tea when he's tired. Is this cup of hot tea important? Tom, if he could answer my question, he would definitely grab my shoulders and nod, saying it's important. The experiment entered its 2nd phase, during Moscow's spring. Having already achieved the conditions for artificially creating a proton stream, all that remained was to manufacture a wormhole, capable of traversing time and space. I don't understand physics, but wormholes are definitely the most frequently mentioned term in the science fiction stories of my magazine. The difficulty and absurdity of it can be seen from this. He wants to artificially create wormholes and define this action with a new term. It's called quantum self-splitting. I watched as he wrote in his notebook, under conditions of high machine pressure, low temperature, and high-frequency electromagnetic fields, locally perturb the stable vacuum, and use a guiding device to force the vacuum state into nonlinear fluctuations. The spatial point is extracted from its original causal chain, thereby splitting into 2 coherent entrances. It does not pierce through space but rather reconfigures the topological structure of local space. Put together, I couldn't quite understand it. In short, based on his proposed quantum fluctuation theory, a vacuum is not entirely empty but rather involves the spontaneous generation and annihilation of virtual particles. Within an extremely short time frame, energy fluctuations appear in space. Under certain specific conditions, these minute fluctuations can be artificially amplified or manipulated to form a wormhole entrance that tears open the fabric of space. Ronald's experiments were going even worse than before, with fewer and fewer supporters. Over the years, he had ceased activity in the field of applied physics, even attracting criticism, accused of delving into charlatan research, fantasizing about the impossible reversal of time. They said he had become a madman, experimenting on himself, and would one day die on that terrifying machine. In fact, the prerequisite for time travel in his theory was death. After all, once reduced to protons, a person would already be more scattered than ashes. That's why no one was willing to be his test subject. He would become the first test subject of the behemoth he created, perhaps also the last. On a sunny morning in Moscow, he faced the final stage of his experiment. The few remaining followers were tasked with observing the entire experiment from outside a glass room. He lay down inside the oddly shaped silver vortex titanium box. The machine started. No one knew whether it would slice him into countless invisible fragments, or if it could truly transport him through time. Perhaps both. The buzzing sound of operation filled my ears. Regardless of his condition, I soon reacted. I felt something pulling at me, a kind of resonance, a whirlpool. I spun with its motion, yet never felt dizzy. I couldn't perceive, yet knew that self was a fluid. Countless things exploded, darted, and surged around me. I was being led, yet it felt like rushing. I couldn't sense the flow of time, as if billions of years were roaring past my ears. Yet also like a fleeting instant, I fell into an abyss, endlessly plummeting, falling. Ronald's experiment succeeded, perhaps, but I had no time to spare for people's cheers, no time to spare for how great he was, or what kind of changes the future would bring. I saw that I couldn't see those whirlpools. I heard that I couldn't hear those whispers, until my vision was filled with light. I open my eyes. The spring breeze blows. Light falls through the library window. And the poetry journal in my hand just turns to the next page. Someone beside me tugs at my sleeve. Nellie. Today Senior Ronald is the teaching assistant. If we go late, we probably won't get seats. The crowd rushed past us in a hurry. In this library where materials were not yet complete and the infrastructure showed slight signs of wear, diligent young people often gathered, striving for new ideals. The soft melody of morning songs pulls my thoughts back to reality. Nellie, what's wrong? Haven't you been thinking about Ronald non-stop? Hurry up, or we really won't get a spot if we're any later. Ronald. Hearing this name, I suddenly snapped back to reality. It was like white noise, gentle yet impossible to ignore. But this time, I noticed something. Instinctively, upon hearing this name, my first reaction was to avoid it. I no longer love Ronald. How many years? Clearly I've thought of him for so many years, accompanied him for so long, long enough to build a family, long enough to become each other's daily support, even a familial presence. In every day and night when my heart was stirred by him, I found myself lost in thought. I suddenly realized that one day, I no longer had any feelings for him. So it turns out there really would come a day when I felt nothing for him. I gently pushed away the girl's hand that was holding mine, and smiled at her. Go ahead. I want to read a little longer. At least give me one more chance to start over. I don't want Ronald. There was a commotion at the door. Not too loud, but just enough to make me look up from my vintage digest. Someone was in a hurry. When ordinary people rush around looking for someone, they're usually glanced at and ignored by others. But that was Ronald. At 20, Ronald had a white shirt that perfectly accentuated his waist, with black tousled hair lightly swaying in the breeze as he walked. His features were sharp, yet compared to his older self, he still carried a youthful edge, like a sword freshly unsheathed, with pursed lips and an air of aloofness. In that unadorned era, he walked as if he had stepped straight out of a modern fashion magazine. Pulling gazes toward him, I hid my face behind the book, hoping not to be noticed. Unfortunately, he walked straight toward me. He grabbed my wrist and tried to kiss me. I raised my hand and slapped him. These two things probably happened within 2 seconds, eliciting a small but noticeable gasp from the onlookers. His face was slapped askew by me. The stray hairs over his forehead obscured his dark eyes. I couldn't see his expression clearly. I only knew the hand gripping my wrist still hadn't loosened. Nellie, he called me. I looked at him. Let go. Will you? A cold, firm tone. I never thought the day would come when I'd use it on Ronald. At this point, we're definitely the center of attention anyway. I don't mind laying everything out in the open. Ronald, if you keep pulling me like that, the whole school will hear about you harassing a female classmate. He let go of his hand. Sorry, actually, if you really think about it, it's been so long since I died. Ronald and I haven't spoken. He subconsciously brought together the index finger and thumb that had touched me, gently rubbing. Nellie. We've gone back to the past. Can we start everything over again? I gazed at him deeply, very deeply. So many things are beyond our control. We often don't realize we're falling in love until it's too late. And by the time we want to turn back, We find the path no longer exists. They called him a pity. Ronald was too arrogant. Human relationships always start beautifully. Then friction breeds resentment. Ronald was the opposite. He didn't care about me at first. But in the end, he cared deeply. But I don't like you anymore, Ronald. The setting sun swayed gently as I walked past him, enunciating each word deliberately. I never imagined the day would come when Ronald and I would switch roles. But that's exactly what happened. In the past, I worked hard to develop new dishes just to get him to take one more bite. Now, he's no less devoted. I suddenly stopped in my tracks, and the man following me halted as well. I watched as he pulled out a bouquet of vibrant roses from behind his back. He was too eye-catching, more so than a bouquet of roses. A young man with jade-white skin lowered his eyes, standing beside the vibrant roses. It was indeed a feast for the eyes. Yet, surprisingly, I felt not the slightest ripple of emotion inside. It's even a bit annoying. Ronald, look at yourself, standing on the stairs. I looked down at him from above. Don't you think this isn't like you anymore? After being rejected so many times, aren't you tired of it yet? Why must you keep pestering me? Given a second chance at life, there are clearly many other things you could be doing. Why bother? I don't care. I can't do it. I can give up everything. But a life without you. He suddenly stopped speaking. The dark eyes gazed deeply at me. I don't want to stay for even a second. Nellie, I would die without you. His eyes are truly beautiful. Like a piece of obsidian. Deep and captivating. Suddenly, I remembered how I used to long every day for his gaze, clear as water, to fall upon me, longing for him to whisper sweet nothings to me. But why is it that now, I don't want to see or hear any of it at all? The wind cheers, and so the petals are blown into scattered fragments. But I don't love you anymore. This is the reason. After I told him, his eyes suddenly reddened for a moment. These past few days, whenever I return to the dorm, I become the center of conversation. Holding my book, I let my roommates chatter around me. Nellie, you've become a big celebrity. Hurry up and tell me, what's really going on between you and Ronald? How did you get involved with him? Reject Ronald. My roommate nudged my shoulder. That's so cool. Possibly Ronald was perceived that way by everyone at the time. The probability of actively pursuing someone is even lower than someone proving the Riemann hypothesis. But compared to all this, I've already gone back to the past. Ronald really doesn't matter anymore. I closed the book and jumped off the bed. I waved at them. Let's not talk about this for now. Interested in starting a business. Starting a business. I nodded and flipped open the magazine in my hand to show them. All the books we're reading now are paper-based. Right. Whether it's serialized novels or submissions. But if I told you that in the near future, the form of novels published on websites would rapidly rise, would you believe me? I want to create a website for serializing novels. Terms like website and online novels were rarely mentioned in this era. In youth, the blueprint for the future is always filled with madness, and the unknown holds its own unique, lingering allure, especially now that I hold the key in my hand. One thing is certain, in this lifetime, everything for me can start anew. So compared to entangled love, indeed, taking the path never traveled before is far more appealing. The starlight sparkles brilliantly in my eyes. That night, the lights in the girls' dormitory stayed on until dawn. Everything starts anew for me. This lifetime, there will be no Ronald. Extra. Early summer has just begun, and these days it keeps raining heavily. Ronald stood across from the teaching building, looking from his perspective. The faintly glowing windows likely hosted some celebratory event, yet the carefully wrapped gift in his hand, clutched for so long, now had no reason to be given. He knew that even if it was given away, the outcome would be the same, lying in the trash bin beside him. Today is Nellie's birthday. He disrupted the timeline, taking her back to the first birthday of the past. Nellie rejected him for the 108th day. To be honest, did he know he would end up like this? He knew. Once his mind started working, he realized how wrong his actions were. But why can some emotions be hidden so deeply? Why can some people walk so far without looking back? He returned to the past. But the past gave him the harshest punishment. In fact, many times, if he had just taken one step forward, things wouldn't have turned out this way. If only he had seriously celebrated her birthday with her back then. If only he had smiled at her more when she lifted her head and spoke to him cheerfully. If only he could have held her when she was afraid of the cold in winter. If that had been the case, maybe she wouldn't have disliked him so much. Maybe she wouldn't have refused to tell him even in her final moments. It was that simple. He could have had her. How arrogant he was. When he had so many chances to set things right. Why did he throw them away? Why did he ignore them? His heart began to ache again, and he pressed his hand against it. So much regret. That endless sensation pricked at his heart. A feeling of desperately wanting to escape time itself enveloped him. I was truly wrong. Can you come back? Please. I beg you. But in that heavy rain, he was like a wandering ghost. He could only raise his head to look at the window faintly glowing with warm light. Just like before. Every birthday of his and hers. Every anniversary. He indifferently brushed past them, self-righteously believing it was mere formalism. If it's formalism, he'd embrace any formality now just to spend one more second with her. The evening wind, tangled with rain, crept into his collar. He gazed up longingly at the window that would never light up for him again. But at least, it's still something. He went back to the past. At least he could still see her. Not just a photo. Some memories. One cold nightmare after another. The second hand sweeps past the markings. 3, 2, 1, he murmurs, softly wishing her the happy birthday he never spoke aloud. Night falls. After the light went out, she disappeared too. He was awakened by a tremendous noise. It took him a long while to recover. Only then did he realize that the tremendous noise was the sound of himself falling onto the floor. My bones ache. I have no strength. I can't stand up. That's just how it is when you get old. All sorts of ailments start appearing. I had another dream. He told himself. Could the time for dreaming last a little longer? He told himself again. He simply lay on the ground, wanting to sleep, but could no longer fall asleep. He gazed at the ceiling as the setting sun gradually traced over the mottled marks, until someone knocked on the door. He couldn't stand up at all, but he knew the person knocking had a key. A few minutes later, the door was opened. Tom walked in tapping his cane, searching for him in the room. Finally, he was found lying on the ground. Ronald, he's dead. Tom threw aside his cane to come see him, but he opened his eyes. How did you end up lying here? Tom, despite his own advanced age, still came to help him up. He listened to his own hoarse voice spilling out from his throat. I have to go find Nellie. She went out to buy groceries today. It's raining. I need to bring her home. Nellie is gone. Ronald. Tom knew he had come again and reminded him without surprise. Aren't you taking the medicine the doctor prescribed for you again? She hasn't left. But he couldn't hear Tom speaking anymore, muttering to himself. I've found a way to travel back to the past. I found her. She just turned into a consciousness and stayed by my side. Then I took her back to the past. We can start over. She's not dead. I found her. He grew more and more agitated as he spoke, gesticulating wildly, being held down by Tom. Ronald, I'm telling you, it's the year 2049. Jill has been gone for over 20 years. You didn't travel back in time. What are you thinking about? Modern physics generally considers time as merely information. The past never truly existed. We can never travel through time. You can never go back to the past. He gripped the old man's shoulders across from him. How could you not understand? Ronald suddenly seemed to lose all strength. He stared at him with a pair of turbid eyes. Ronald shook his head, saying no. I've clearly found a way to return to the past. Yes, dreaming is your way of traveling back. Ronald, you're truly pathetic. Over 30 years, and you still can't move on. If that's the case, why didn't you spend those 20-some years properly with her? I regret it. Ronald just kept repeating these words. That's right. But you can't go back to the past, whether you're the most renowned scientist or not. Tom placed the pancakes he brought on his desk. Ronald, I heard that due to some air mass in the UK, the temperature will drop suddenly. Honestly, shouldn't you hire a caregiver to look after you? You're getting on in years. Ronald. The door closed. Ronald sat in the rocking chair staring at that bowl of pancakes. He was growing increasingly fond of prolonged silences. Yet his thoughts revolved with the summer light. It seemed he could see again. See the summer woven by cicadas' songs from over a decade ago. Nellie rushed into the house excitedly, swaying the bag in her hand. Ronald, there's a new pancake stall open downstairs in our neighborhood. Try it. Is it good? He looked at her, crying hysterically. The blanket she once draped over herself was now frayed and worn from his use. Yet he couldn't bear to throw it away. Now, even his crying sounded unbearable. Why cry? He just remembered that blind date so many years ago. He could have refused. Just because he saw her. Just because it was her. Just because in the vast crowd, only she made him lift his eyes. The end.